at the Elizabethan age again. I'm saying again because it was indeed the age of poetry. There was the sudden glory when Queen Elizabeth came onto the stage, and then there was culture and education and improving taste, and there was drama and there was music. Oh, what a wonderful age it was. For more information on the Elizabethan age, why don't you go to our first episode? Remember Shakespeare's sonnet number 130, and all the information of the Elizabethan age you can get from there. Sir Philip Sidney, 1554 to 1586. Poet, scholar, soldier, a chivalrous man. That's what he's remembered for. He wrote a lot. He wrote a lot of poems, among them many sonnets. He traveled to Europe, and therefore his horizons were expanded to quite a distance. One of his most famous collection of poems is Astrophel and Stella. He also wrote a pastoral romance called Arcadia, and much more. In him we see all the qualities of the Elizabethan poet, which we shall when we look at the sonnet under consideration here. The poem Sleep is actually taken from Astrophel and Stella, a collection of sonnets written by Sir Philip Sidney. Astrophel is star lover and Stella is the star. So this entire poem sequence, or sonnet sequence if you will, is actually the lover addressing his beloved. So you have Astrophel and Stella. The poem now is Sleep, or in some editions listed as sonnet number 39. Let me read the poem to you. It's a sonnet, so it's a 14-lined poem. Come sleep, O sleep, the certain knot of peace, the baiting place of wit, the balm of woe, the poor man's wealth, the prisoner's release, the indifferent judge between the high and low. With shield of proof, shield me from out the breeze of those fierce darts despair at me doth throw. Oh, make me in me those civil wars to cease. I will good tribute pay, if thou do so. Take thou of me smooth pillows, sweetest bed, a chamber deaf to noise and blind of light, a rosy garland and a weary head. And if these things, as being thine by right, move not thy heavy grace, thou shalt in me, livelier than elsewhere, Stella's image see. What a sonnet, making clear to us the love for his beloved. Notice that the poem ends with the mention of Stella. So in this sonnet, we have the poet addressing sleep directly, asking sleep to come to him, because sleep can do many things for us. In many a poem have many other poets talked about sleep. Some of you might remember even Shakespeare's songs in some of his plays. So he calls out to sleep, addresses sleep directly, and says, come to me. What are you? You bring peace to me. You are the place of wit, the balm of woe. So if I have sorrow, the ointment you apply, the balm to ease your pain, sleep becomes that. It is the wealth, not of the rich, but the wealth even of the poor man. Because having toiled all day, probably, it is sleep which gives him the kind of peace that he is looking forward to. It is the indifferent judge between high and low. Maybe some of you have heard the proverb, the saying, which says, death is the great leveler. Here Sidney goes one step forward and talks about sleep. Remember, even John Donne talked about sleep as being the small death. So he talks about the sleep coming to us as being the indifferent judge What is indifferent here? Not distinguishing, not making a distinction between the high and the low, between the rich and the poor. It is in its approach totally classless. What does it do? It ensures that I do not succumb to despair. So all the darts that are thrown at me, those are lost, those are forgotten, those are subsumed by sleep. Oh, make in me those civil wars to cease. So what shall I do? When I go to bed, when I am in my chamber, when there is silence, when there is no noise, when it seems as if I have a garland of rose, come to me and just think of it. If you do not have anything else, it is there that you will see Stella. Because even in my sleep, there is the image of my beloved. Remember the star, Astrophil and Stella. This is a sonnet. And when we think of sonnets, remember, we've always made a distinction between the Italian sonnet and the English sonnet. The Italian sonnet is also called the Petrarchan sonnet, and the English sonnet, the Shakespearean sonnet. Why? I think the answer is obvious, because the most important proponent, poet of the Italian sonnet is Petrarch, and of the English sonnet is Shakespeare. So what is the difference? Very quickly, if you think of the Shakespearean sonnet, we have 4 quatrains and a couplet. But in the Petrarchan sonnet, we have an octave and a sestet. I think the words are self-explanatory, but in case you do have a doubt, let me explain it to you. An octave, as the word suggests, is an 8-lined verse, and a sestet is a 6-line verse. Can you quickly put them together? 8 plus 6 is 14, which is our sonnet. Okay, having said that, let us look at some of the important figures of speech in this sonnet, Sleep. The first one is what we call the apostrophe, that is a direct address. Remember, when we talk of the ode also as a genre, we say that it is a direct address. So here, the poet is addressing somebody. Somebody? No, something. He's calling out to sleep and directly says, "Come, O sleep." The figure of speech is apostrophe. There is personification, which we see in many poems. And what is personification? When you give an inanimate object the characteristics, the features, the qualities of a human being. Here, sleep is being almost portrayed as a human being. And that is what we mean by personification. Read the poem again, read it to yourself, and the similes and the metaphors will strike you ever so beautifully. I think that is the greatness of Elizabethan poetry, so also the poems of Sir Philip Sidney. What do we have here when I talk about similes and metaphors? The baiting place, the balm of woe, right? We're talking of sleep, remember? But what is it? It is the balm of woe. So you have a metaphor there. It's the poor man's wealth. We're not talking about money. We are not talking about pounds and dollars and rupees. What are we talking of? Sleep, which becomes wealth. I would advise you to also use your own ability to look at metaphors and similes. One important thing that we notice here is imagery. Imagery is the ability to create in front of your eyes, your mental eyes also, the scene. Can you see the bedroom here? Can you see the smooth pillows and the sweetest bed? Can you see the chamber which is deaf to noise? All these figures of speech are what I think contribute to making this a wonderful sonnet. Having looked at the poem and the figures of the speech, what shall we do next? Come on, go to your library and look up other sonnets, look up other Elizabethan sonnets and see what fun it is to read these short 14 liked poems.